Tonight we journey back through the deep, dark woods of time, to a place where the air hums with magic and the boundary between the earth and the otherworld is thin as parchment. You find yourself not in a grand temple of stone, but within a grove of ancient oaks, their gnarled branches clawing at a sky heavy with stars. The chill of a late autumn evening seeks through your tunic, a crisp mist that carries the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the faint, sweet smoke of a distant hearth. You can feel the weight of the silence here, a reverent hush that is broken only by the scuttling of some unseen creature in the undergrowth and the soft, rhythmic breath of the figures standing beside you. Your heart beats a little faster, not from fear, but from the palpable anticipation of a ceremony older than the standing stones that dot the hills. You are here for a harvest, but not of wheat or barley. You are here to gather mistletoe, and you are about to learn that in this era, with your modern sensibilities, you probably won't survive the spiritual and political intricacies of the task. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice, glinting dully in the torchlight, is the tool. It isn't the iron sickle you might use for cutting hay or the bronze knife you'd carry for daily chores. No, this is a sickle forged from a single, curved piece of gold. It feels alien in your hand, surprisingly heavy and cool to the touch. Its edge is sharp, but not razor sharp. This isn't a tool designed for brute force or efficiency. The weight is symbolic, a metal associated with the sun, with the divine, with immortality. Using an iron blade to cut the sacred plant would be like using a sledgehammer to perform heart surgery. It might get the job done, but it would utterly destroy the very essence you're trying to preserve. The Druids believed iron was a metal that repelled spirits, and since the mistletoe was considered a spirit-given gift, a celestial entity that had fallen to earth, you had to receive it with a worthy, non-threatening vessel. Gold, incorruptible and shining like the sun, was the only acceptable metal for this divine negotiation. You heft the sickle, feeling its unbalanced weight. It's an awkward thing, really, a ceremonial object that demands a specific, practiced grip. You can't just hack away with it. The very impracticality of it is the point. This isn't farming, this is a form of communion. The main historical fact we have about this entire ritual comes from none other than Pliny the Elder, a Roman naturalist who recorded the Gaulish Druidic practices in his Natural History. He's our one main written source, a curious outsider looking in, and he specifically notes the use of a golden sickle. It's a tantalizing, direct peek through the fog of time, though you have to wonder how much got lost in translation between a Celtic Druid and a Roman scholar. Historians still argue whether Pliny's account was an accurate ethnography or a romanticized projection of Roman ideals onto a noble savage culture. The fringe theory that the gold wasn't just symbolic, but functional in a way we'd now consider energetic. Some modern esoteric researchers suggest that gold, as a highly conductive metal, was chosen because it could actually channel the life force of the mistletoe without short-circuiting it, much like how we'd use a specific type of wire for a specific electrical current. It's a fun, anachronistic thought, that the Druids were early biohackers, using precious metals to manipulate a plant's metaphysical Wi-Fi signal. You look at the sickle again, and for a moment, you imagine a faint, golden hum emanating from its edge, a vibration felt not in your ears, but in your bones. But back to the cold, hard, or rather, soft, heavy, reality in your hand. This golden sickle is your key, your passport into this sacred moment. Without it, the entire ceremony is void. The chief druid, his white robe seeming to glow in the twilight, catches your eye and gives a slow, deliberate nod. The message is clear, the tool is ready, and so must you be. The fate of the harvest, and by extension the fortune of the tribe for the coming year, is about to be placed, quite literally, in your grasp. The oak tree ahead, vast and towering, holds its precious, pearlescent berries high in its bare branches, a cluster of life in the skeletal winter canopy. It's waiting. They are all waiting. That nod from the chief druid wasn't a signal to begin, but a silent reminder of the 6 long years of training that have led you to this single, heart-pounding moment. You don't just pick up a golden sickle and start whacking at celestial plants. You have to earn the right, and the path to earning it makes your modern university degree look like a weekend seminar. The weight of the sickle in your hand is nothing compared to the weight of the knowledge crammed into your head, a vast and intricate oral library memoized with a precision that would make any hard drive weep with envy. You spent your first year just learning to listen, to the wind through different types of leaves, to the language of birds, to the subtle shifts in the forest's breath that signaled changes in weather, danger, or divine favor. It was less like school and more like a full sensory, immersive boot camp for your soul, and you probably complained about the lack of a proper mattress for at least the first 3 months. The training grind was relentless and profoundly physical. You didn't just read about the properties of plants, you lived with them, ingested them in carefully controlled, often terrifyingly unpleasant, rituals to understand their effects on the human body from the inside out. You learned to track animals not just for hunting, but to understand their habits as signs and portents. Your body became a barometer, your mind a sprawling map of stellar movements and lunar cycles. The main historical fact here, again pieced together from later commentators and Irish vernacular texts, is that the Druidic education system was famously long, taking up to 20 years for the most advanced scholars. Your 6-year focus on the botany and astrotheology required for this specific mistletoe ritual was considered a specialized fast track, the postgraduate work of its day. You had to master the complex, interlocking calendars, solar, lunar, and stellar, that dictated every single action of your life, especially this one. And the memorization. Oh, the memorization. Every chant, every genealogy of the gods, every legal precedent, every healing recipe, every single star in a particular constellation and its mythological significance, all of it had to be held perfectly in your head. There were no scrolls, no cheat sheets. Writing was considered a crutch, a technology that weakened the essential muscle of memory and diluted the power of knowledge that was passed directly from teacher to student, from one mind to another. Historians still argue whether this strict oral tradition was a deliberate form of knowledge encryption, a way to keep their power exclusive and safe from Roman appropriation, or if it was a genuine philosophical belief that spoken words carried a living power that written symbols simply could not. The Druids were essentially the original hip-hop artists, crafting incredibly complex, rhythmic verses with internal rhymes and mnemonic devices just to remember which plant cured gout. You'd whisper the healing herbs epic to each other, trying to find the beat. It was silly, but it helped. It made the endless lists of bark of the willow, when the moon is hollow, boiled in water, for a daughter's ailment, feel less like a chore and more like you were composing the greatest mixtape of the ancient world. Now, standing here, that entire 6-year mixtape is queued up in your mind, every track ready to play its part. The weight of the sickle is familiar now, an extension of your arm, because the true weight, the weight of all those words, all those years, is finally being put to its intended use. With the sickle's weight a familiar, solemn promise in your hand, the chief druid turns, and the white-robed procession begins. You fall into line, a single thread in a flowing ribbon of bleached linen, moving with a slow, deliberate pace into the deeper shadows of the sacred grove. There is no speaking, no chatter. The only sounds are the soft crush of dew-laden grass under your leather-wrapped feet and the synchronized rhythm of your collective breath. You are alone, this line of druids, inhaling the silence of the grove and exhaling a focused, shared intention. The torches, held aloft by the initiates at the front and rear of the column, cast long, dancing shadows that make the ancient oak seem to sway and reach for you as you pass. It feels less like a walk and more like a slow, purposeful immersion into another layer of reality, one where the rules you know are suspended. You keep your eyes fixed on the back of the druid in front of you, the rough-spun texture of his robe your visual anchor. The path isn't a path at all, not in the way you'd think of one. There's no worn dirt, no cleared undergrowth. You are walking a ley line, an invisible track of terrestrial energy known only to those who have been taught to feel it thrumming beneath the soil. To stray from this line would be a profound sacrilege, like barging through the front doors of a cathedral during a prayer. Each step is a placement of faith, a physical manifestation of trust in the knowledge passed down through countless generations before you. You are tracing a pattern on the land, a ritual in motion, and the destination is not just a specific tree, but a specific node of power where the veil is thin. The main historical fact we can infer about these processions is their necessity for secrecy. These groves were the Druids' universities, their temples, and their laboratories. Roman writers often commented on the Druids' habit of meeting in remote, shadowy woods, far from the eyes of the uninitiated. This wasn't just for ambience, it was a matter of cultural survival and the protection of their intellectual property. The procession itself was a security measure, a way to ensure that only those who had endured the years of training could even find the site of the most important rituals. You are part of a living, breathing security detail, guarding a secret that is not a thing, but an action, an event. You remember an old, wizened druid, his beard so long he sometimes accidentally stepped on it, telling you that the correct pace for a sacred procession was the speed of a growing oak. You'd spent a whole afternoon watching a sapling, trying to discern its growth rate, before realizing it was a joke meant to teach you patience and a different perception of time. Now, moving at this glacial, reverent pace, you finally get it. You aren't walking through the forest, you are allowing the forest to accept your presence. Historians still argue whether these sacred groves were specific, permanent sites or if they shifted location based on celestial alignments and political necessity, a movable feast of the spirit. As you walk, you feel a subtle shift in the air. The temperature drops a fraction of a degree, and the quality of the silence deepens, becoming thick and expectant. The chattering of a squirrel in the distance suddenly cuts off. The druid in front of you slows his pace even further, and you follow suit, your heart beginning to drum a little louder against your ribs. You don't need to look up to know you are getting close. You can feel it in the ground beneath your feet, in the air on your skin, in the way the very light seems to coalesce ahead. The procession tightens, the space between each of you closing until you are almost a single entity, a multi-limbed being of white cloth and focused will, stepping into the final, sacred clearing. The procession halts as one at the edge of the clearing, a perfect circle of druids facing inward. The chief druid, now standing before the mightiest oak in the grove, lifts his face to the canopy. He does not search with his eyes, he listens. Then, from deep within his chest, a sound begins, low and resonant, that is not quite a song and not quite a prayer, but something in between, the chant of location. It's a series of repeating, melodic phrases, their vowels stretched long and thin, that seem to vibrate in the space between your teeth. You join in, your voice one thread in a tapestry of sound, the words so ingrained from years of repetition that they feel like they are being pulled from you rather than consciously sung. The chant isn't directed at the tree, but at the mistletoe itself, a vocal net cast into the branches to gently ensnare the plant's attention and confirm its readiness for harvest. The sound you create as a group is otherworldly. It lacks the structured harmony of a modern choir, instead creating a dense, droning texture, like a swarm of benevolent bees tuned to a celestial frequency. You can feel the vibration in your sternum, a physical hum that syncs your heartbeat to the rhythm of the chant. The purpose is twofold, a piece of spiritual technology as sophisticated as any modern sensor. Firstly, it is an act of politeness. You are asking permission from the spirit of the mistletoe, acknowledging its autonomy and sacred nature. You are not a conqueror taking a prize, you are a supplicant requesting a gift. Secondly, it is a form of sonar. The Druids believed that a thriving, potent mistletoe plant would resonate with the specific frequencies of the chant, and that this resonance would be felt by the chanters, a subtle feedback loop of energy confirming this was the right plant, at the right time, on the right day. The mainstream historical lens, devoid of this sensory understanding, would simply label this as superstitious incantation. The mistletoe, like many plants, might actually respond to specific sound vibrations. Modern, albeit fringe, botany explores the concept of plant bioacoustics, how plants may perceive and react to sound. The chant, in this light, isn't magic, it's a precise, if intuitively understood, application of a biological principle. You are not casting a spell, you are tuning into the plant's wavelength, having a conversation in a language of vibration before you ever make a physical cut. As the chant swells, you feel a shift. It's a subtle thing, a slight brightening of the pearlescent berries high above, or perhaps just a trick of the torchlight. But the feeling in the circle changes. The collective focus sharpens, the drone of the chant solidifying into a pillar of sound that seems to hold up the very sky. The chief druid's eyes are still closed, his head tilted, listening for the final, silent confirmation. Historians still argue whether these chants were standardized liturgical texts or improvised in the moment by the head druid based on the specific conditions of the harvest, a form of ancient, spiritual jazz. You know the truth, it's both. The structure is ancient, but the performance is unique to this night, this grove, this particular cluster of berries. The chant begins to soften, the final syllables drawn out until they fade into the natural sounds of the night, leaving behind a silence that feels charged, different than before. It is a silence of agreement. The permission has been granted. The mistletoe has been located not just in space, but in spirit. The chief druid opens his eyes and looks not at the plant, but at you, his gaze dropping to the golden sickle in your hand. The vocal part of the negotiation is over. The physical act is about to begin. The air in the clearing is now taut, a drumskin waiting for the first beat. As the last echoes of the chant dissolve into the night, a deeper awareness begins to dawn on you, one that your 6 years of training were meant to unlock. You are not standing in a collection of individual trees, but within a single, vast, subterranean superorganism. This sacred grove is a nexus in the mycelial network, a sprawling, intelligent web of fungal threads called mycelium that connects the root systems of every oak, every shrub, every blade of grass. You can't see it, but you can feel it now, a low, thrumming presence beneath the soles of your feet, a silent, symbiotic internet of the forest floor, exchanging nutrients, chemical warnings, and who knows what other forms of information. The oak before you isn't just a host for the mistletoe, it's a central server in this ancient, organic network, and you are about to perform a delicate operation on it. This isn't some vague, hippy-dippy feeling, it's a concrete sensory input. The Druids understood this connectivity on an intuitive, experimental level. They spoke of the forest as a living entity, and your training involved long meditations aimed at perceiving this subterranean flow of life. The mainstream historical record, of course, is silent on mycelium. Pliny and his contemporaries saw trees as separate entities, with modern mycologists like Paul Stamets revealing the stunning complexity of these fungal networks, dubbing them Earth's natural internet. You smile inwardly, realizing the Druids were the original network administrators, and they were fiercely protective of their grove's bandwidth. This awareness changes everything. The ritual isn't just about you, the Druids, and the mistletoe. It's about the entire grove. The act of cutting the mistletoe will send a shockwave through this network, a chemical and energetic signal that will be registered by every connected organism. The precise, non-iron tool, the white cloth, the specific chant, all of it is designed to send the gentlest, most respectful signal possible. It's the difference between a surgeon making a precise incision and a barbarian hacking off a limb. The network is watching, feeling. A clumsy harvest would be like introducing a devastating virus, severing the spiritual Wi-Fi for the entire area. Historians still argue whether the Druids' veneration of specific groves was purely animistic or if it was a pragmatic understanding of ecosystem management, ensuring the long-term health of these powerful natural sites. You glance down at the soil, dark and rich, and for a moment, you imagine you can see the faint, ghostly glow of the mycelial threads, a luminescent map of the forest's collective consciousness. It's a fun, psychedelic thought, but it underscores the immense responsibility now resting on your shoulders, and in your hand, which holds the sickle. You are not a lone actor. You are a node, temporarily granted access to a system far older and more complex than your own life. The permission you chanted for wasn't just from the mistletoe, it was from the network itself. The silence in the clearing now feels like the focused attention of 1,000 unseen listeners, a silent audience awaiting the next, critical move. The chief druid gives a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It is time to prepare the receiving cloth. The network is ready. The stage is set. The chief druid's nod is not for you, not yet. It is a signal for the other senior druids. As one, they move, their white robes swirling like gentle ghosts in the torchlight. From a woven basket, one of them produces a length of cloth, so brilliantly white it seems to generate its own light in the gloom of the clearing. This is the ritual of the white cloth, and its importance is as critical as the cut of the sickle itself. The cloth is spread out on the earth, directly beneath the chosen bough of mistletoe, held taut at its four corners by the druids who have now knelt, their faces upturned, their bodies becoming living, breathing tent poles. The tension in their arms is visible. The cloth must remain perfectly flat, a pristine, elevated patch of ground that must not touch the actual soil. You watch, your grip tightening on the sickle's cool haft. This is the safety net, the divine catcher's mitt. The core belief, the mainstream tenet you had drilled into you for years, is that if the sacred mistletoe were to ever touch the earth, its potent, celestial power would instantly drain back into the ground, lost forever. The plant, having never rooted in the soil, is seen as a being of the air, a gift from the sky gods caught in the arms of the oak, the king of the trees. For it to contact the dirt would be a catastrophic short circuit, a squandering of a divine gift. The white cloth is a symbolic intermediary, a pure, unsullied plane that can receive the plant without contaminating its power or allowing its vitality to seep away. It's a buffer zone between heaven and earth. The cloth was really about spiritual contamination, or if it was just the ancient equivalent of a sterile field. Think about it. The forest floor is teeming with fungi, bacteria, and insects. Letting a plant intended for medicinal potions and elixirs, which you might consume or apply to wounds, fall directly into that microbial soup would be, well, frankly disgusting and potentially dangerous. The white cloth, likely meticulously cleaned and perhaps even treated with antiseptic herbs, was a way to keep the harvest hygienic. The Druids, in their infinite wisdom, had packaged a profound spiritual principle with a very sound public health practice. They were the original masters of branding. The Druids holding the cloth are perfectly still, their breathing controlled. There is no room for error here. A gust of wind, a slip of the hand, a moment of inattention, and the entire 6-year lead-up, the procession, the chants, would be for nothing. The mistletoe must fall from the cut, arc through the air, and land perfectly in the center of this pristine white field. Historians still argue whether this belief in the plant's earth aversion was unique to the mistletoe or part of a broader Celtic cosmology that viewed certain sacred objects as being in a state of ritual purity that the mundane earth could defile. You don't have time for scholarly debates now. You see the strain in the arms of your colleagues, the absolute focus in their eyes. The cloth is ready, a taut, white rectangle of concentrated intention. All that is left is for you to climb the tree, make the cut, and fulfill your part of this ancient, silent contract. The chief druid turns his gaze from the cloth to you. His eyes are calm, but they hold an unspoken command. It is time. The chief druid's gaze is your cue. You step forward, the golden sickle feeling less like a tool and more like a living extension of your will. The oak tree looms, its bark a landscape of deep grooves and hardened ridges. There are no ladders here, no climbing spikes. You are expected to ascend as the druids always have, with bare hands and a profound, intimate knowledge of the tree's body. You find your first handhold, your fingers slotting into a cold, damp crevice. You place your foot on a gnarled bough, testing its strength before committing your weight. This is not a climb of conquest, but one of request. Each movement is a prayer, a silent apology for the intrusion, a reassurance to the tree that your intentions are pure. The rough bark scrapes against your palms, a gritty, organic texture that grounds you in the physical reality of the moment. You climb slowly, methodically, the way you were taught. The world of the ground recedes. The upturned faces of the white-robed druids become pale moons in the darkness below, the held cloth a glowing portal. The air grows cooler, and the torchlight from beneath struggles to pierce the intricate web of bare branches. Up here, the silence is different. It's the silence of height and exposure, broken only by the creak of the boughs and the sound of your own breathing, which you consciously try to quiet. You are moving into the mistletoe's domain, the realm between earth and sky. The cluster is now within reach, a constellation of waxy, white berries and pale green leaves that seem to hold the faint light of the obscured moon within them. It's otherworldly, a splash of ethereal color in the monochrome winter skeleton of the oak. This is it. The first precise cut. You adjust your grip on the sickle, the gold now warmed by your own body heat. The mainstream historical fact, as per Pliny, is that the mistletoe was cut specifically with a golden sickle. But he doesn't describe the cut itself. Your training, however, was explicit. You do not saw. You do not hack. You make a single, clean, decisive incision at the junction where the mistletoe's main stem meets the oak's branch. The goal is a swift, surgical severance, a clean break that honors both the gift and the host. It's the difference between a graceful farewell and a violent abduction. You take a final, steadying breath, your entire being focused on that one, singular point of contact between metal and plant. A nervous thought flits through your mind, a memory of your trainer's dry humor. Don't dither. The plant hates a dither. It's like a bandage, just rip it off. It was his way of saying that hesitation introduces error, that the spiritual and physical momentum must be one. Historians still argue whether the Druids believed the potency of the mistletoe was concentrated in the berries, the leaves, or the stem, and if the specific type of cut was meant to preserve a particular part of that potency. You don't have the luxury of such analysis. Your muscles coil. Your arm draws back slightly. In one fluid, committed motion, you sweep the golden sickle forward and across the base of the mistletoe. You feel a brief, crisp resistance, and then a release. The cluster is free. For a heart-stopping moment, it seems to hang in the air, defying gravity, a perfect, luminous orb. Then it begins its fall, tumbling slowly end over end, a piece of the sky falling into the waiting, upraised hands of the earthbound druids below. You hold your breath, your body pressed against the rough bark of the oak, your work done. The success of the ritual now hinges entirely on the catch. Time dilates, stretching the seconds into a taut, silent film. The falling mistletoe seems to drift rather than plummet, a slow-motion descent that has every eye in the clearing locked onto its trajectory. You are frozen against the tree, your knuckles white where they grip a branch, your own role suddenly and utterly complete. The focus of the entire universe has narrowed to that tumbling cluster of white and the 4 druids below, their bodies tense like athletes, the white cloth held in a state of perfect, unwavering tension between them. They are the human anchors in this final, critical phase of the operation, and their task is simple, absolute, and terrifying, the catch that must not fail. You see the lead druid's eyes, wide and unblinking, tracking the plant's spin. He makes a minute adjustment with his arms, a subtle tilt of the cloth to compensate for the drift you can't even perceive from your perch. The others mirror him instinctively, a single organism with 4 bodies. This is the culmination of their training, too, a test of nerve, coordination, and faith. The mainstream belief, the one that gives this moment its unbearable weight, is that if the mistletoe touches the earth, its power is not merely diminished, it is actively corrupted. It becomes Geis, a taboo object, a thing of bad luck and poisoned potential. A harvest that ends with the plant on the ground is worse than no harvest at all. It's an omen of famine, disease, or defeat in battle. The pressure on the 4 cloth holders is immense, a weight of tribal destiny far heavier than the physical weight of the linen they strain against. Almost blasphemous thought pops into your head, a memory of practicing this very catch with your fellow apprentices using a bundle of sticks and an old blanket. It had devolved into a fumbling, laughing mess, with one of you inevitably tripping over the cloth and sending the sacred mistletoe rolling into a puddle. The senior druid had watched you, his expression unreadable, before saying, "The gods have a sense of humor. Let's hope they're not watching today." It was a moment of levity that underscored the sheer, terrifying absurdity of the stakes. Now, watching the real thing, there is no laughter, only the silent, desperate prayer that the practice has paid off. The mistletoe enters the torchlight cone above the cloth. It's close enough now that you can make out the individual berries. The descent seems to accelerate in its final foot. The druids brace, their muscles cording. There is a soft, almost inaudible thump as the plant lands, dead center, on the pristine white field. The cloth dips with the impact, but the holders keep it taut, preventing any part of the sacred harvest from rolling or touching the earth. For a second, there is absolute silence. Then, a collective, shuddering exhalation sweeps through the circle of onlookers, a sound of released tension so profound it feels like the forest itself has been holding its breath. The catch has not failed. The gift has been received. Historians still argue whether the consequences of a failed catch were believed to be literal or purely symbolic, a way to enforce ritual discipline through the power of terrifying belief. From your vantage point, watching the relieved, reverent faces below as they gaze upon their successful catch, the distinction feels entirely meaningless. The silence following the successful catch is brief, shattered not by cheers, but by a new sound that erupts from the circle of druids, the chant of vitality. This is different from the low, searching drone of the location chant. This one is brighter, faster, a rising, harmonious chorus that feels like the sun breaking over a horizon. Your voice joins the surge instinctively, the words a stream of blessings and affirmations directed at the mistletoe now cradled in its white cloth. The chant is a spiritual sealant, a vocal ritual meant to lock the plant's celestial power within its leaves and berries the moment it is severed from the oak. It is the ancient equivalent of slapping a best before date on a jar of miracles, ensuring the magic doesn't have a chance to leak out into the air now that its physical tether to the sky god has been cut. The energy in the clearing transforms. The tension of the cut and the catch melts away, replaced by a palpable, rising joy. The sound you all create is a wave of gratitude and reinforcement. You are, in essence, singing the mistletoe to life, convincing its spirit that its journey is not over, that its power is not only intact but is now being activated for a new purpose. The mainstream interpretation, based on comparative mythology, is that this chant was a form of sympathetic magic, using the power of the human voice to influence the state of the sacred plant, to charge it with intention for its future use in healing and ritual. It's a battery being plugged in, its power level indicated not by bars on a screen, but by the fervor and purity of the song. You can't help but ponder, as you pour your breath into the chant, is whether there's a more biochemical basis for this. Modern studies have shown that plants can respond to their environment in complex ways. Could the specific frequencies and vibrations of this chant, delivered at this precise moment of trauma, being cut from its host, actually trigger a physiological response in the plant? Perhaps it causes the plant to release or preserve certain compounds, a survival mechanism activated by a perceived threat that the Druids, through trial and error, learned to harness. The chant, in this light, isn't just magic, it's a precise, acoustic key that unlocks the plant's full pharmaceutical potential. The Druids weren't just priests, they were master herbal pharmacists with a great soundtrack. The chant reaches its crescendo, a complex, interwoven tapestry of voices that seems to press against the very branches of the trees, a force of pure, focused life. You can see the effect on the other Druids. Their faces are uplifted, ecstatic, their earlier solemnity replaced by a radiant certainty. The mistletoe in the center of the cloth seems to pulse with the rhythm, the white berries glowing as if each one contains a tiny, captured star. Historians still argue whether these chants were considered to have intrinsic power in the sounds themselves or if they were merely vehicles for the focused will of the Druids, the meaning of the words being less important than the collective intention behind them. As the final, ringing note of the chant fades, leaving a humming after silence in its wake, you know the answer is, again, both. The ritual is complete. The mistletoe is now officially, powerfully, and irreversibly sacred. And as the sound dies down, a new, more sobering ritual is about to begin. One that involves the two white bulls waiting patiently at the edge of the clearing. The final, resonant note of the chant of vitality hangs in the air for a moment before being absorbed by the night. In the profound silence that follows, the mood in the clearing shifts once more, from ecstatic celebration to somber, grim purpose. Your gaze, along with everyone else's, is drawn from the mistletoe on its white cloth to the edge of the clearing. There, two massive white bulls stand patient and calm, their breath pluming in the cold air, their hides almost luminous against the dark backdrop of the forest. They have been brought here for this moment, and they are the final, essential payment in the divine transaction you have just conducted. This is the two sacred bull sacrifice, and its symbolism is as heavy and inescapable as the animals themselves. The bulls are led into the center of the circle, their hooves making soft, deep thuds on the earth. They are perfect specimens, unblemished, their white color symbolizing purity, a worthy offering to the gods who have provided the mistletoe. The logic is stark and reciprocal. You have taken a great gift from the celestial realm. You must now give a great gift in return to maintain the balance of the world. The life of the mistletoe, a plant of the sky, is paid for with the life of the bull, a creature of the earth. It is a cosmic balancing of the scales. The mainstream historical fact, courtesy of Pliny, is explicit. After the mistletoe was gathered, the Druids would sacrifice two white bulls as a thanksgiving. It's a jarring, visceral detail that reminds us the ancient world operated on a different moral and spiritual economy, one where blood was a potent currency. The chief Druid steps forward, a ritual knife in his hand. This one, you note, is not gold, but a sharp, functional blade of polished stone or bronze. The sacrifice is not part of the mistletoe's delicate harvest. It is a separate, equally solemn act of slaughter. There are no chants now, only a focused, grim silence. The method is quick and precise, a cut to the throat, a life offered efficiently and with respect. It is not a spectacle of cruelty, but a necessary, solemn duty. As the first bull falls, a great, sighing breath escapes it, a sound that seems to shake the ground you stand on. The second soon follows. The scent of fresh blood, coppery and thick, cuts through the crisp forest air, a stark, metallic reminder of the cost of divine favor. Darkly humorous thought from your training surfaces, a memory of your instructor trying to explain the economics of it. Think of it as a trade. You're swapping two large, grass-eating banknotes for one small, magical, berry-producing diamond. It's a good deal for the tribe, if you don't get too attached to the banknotes. It was a cynical, modern analogy, but it stuck with you. Historians still argue whether this sacrifice was meant to nourish the gods themselves, to strengthen the oak, or to simply bind the community together through the shared, potent experience of a ritual killing and the subsequent feast that would follow. As you watch the dark blood pool on the forest floor, steaming in the cold, you feel the truth of all three reasons. The air is thick with the presence of death, a necessary counterweight to the life you have just secured. The bargain is sealed in blood. The mistletoe is now truly, fully paid for, and the work of transforming it can begin. The scent of blood is a tangible presence, a heavy, iron curtain that has fallen over the clearing. But even as the two white balls lie still upon the earth, the ritual's momentum pushes forward, transforming death into the promise of life. The focus now returns to the mistletoe, resting innocently on its white cloth, seemingly unaware of the price paid for its harvest. Senior Druids, their robes stained at the hem from the sacrifice, carefully gather the corners of the cloth, lifting the sacred plant as if it were a newborn king. They carry it away from the main circle to a smaller, prepared area where a fire crackles under a large, bronze cauldron. You follow, your role shifting from climber and chanter to apprentice alchemist. This is the potion brewing ritual, the moment where celestial potential is distilled into tangible, earthly power. The cauldron is already filled with pure water, collected from a sacred spring and now heated to just below a boil. The air above it shimmers with rising steam. With a reverence that borders on tenderness, the druids handling the mistletoe begin to pluck the berries, letting the waxy white orbs fall into the steaming water. They follow with the leaves, carefully stripped from the stems, which are themselves set aside for other, drier purposes. The main historical belief, one that Pliny recorded with fascination, was that this mistletoe potion was a legendary cure-all, a panacea. It was believed to confer fertility upon barren animals and women, to be an antidote to any poison, and to heal a vast spectrum of ailments. In a world without modern medicine, this concoction was the ultimate treasure, the entire justification for the dangerous harvest and the solemn sacrifice. You are handed a long, polished wooden paddle and given the task of stirring. The motion is slow, clockwise, following the path of the sun. This isn't just to mix the brew, it's to imbue it with the energy of growth and life, to weave the power of the chant and the sacrifice into the very water molecules. The mixture in the cauldron begins to change, the water taking on a faint, opalescent sheen, a pale green-gold hue that seems to hold the light from within. You recall the fringe theory that the mistletoe's active ingredient, viscumin, is a potent, protein-based toxin that can actually kill you if prepared incorrectly. The idea that the druids' cure-all was, in fact, a deadly poison they had learned to tame through precise preparation, by heating it in water to denature the proteins, perhaps, is a wonderfully ironic twist. They weren't just magicians. They were master chemists walking a razor's edge between medicine and mortality, turning a potential weapon into a revered elixir. The steam rising from the cauldron carries a strange, ethereal scent. Not quite herbal, not quite floral, but something clean and sharp, like the air after a lightning strike. You keep stirring, your arm tiring but your mind focused. Historians still argue whether this potion was administered in small, ritualistic doses to the elite or if it was distributed more widely among the tribe during times of plague or famine. As you look at the small, glowing amount in the vast cauldron, you suspect the former. This is not a medicine for the masses, but a concentrated sacrament of power. Finally, the chief druid nods. The brewing is complete. The potion is dipped into specially consecrated clay cups. The magical plant has been transformed. It is now a liquid key, ready to unlock health, vitality, and perhaps even a glimpse into the other world for those deemed worthy to drink it. The steam from the potent brew curls towards the sky, a visible tether between the earthly cauldron and the celestial bodies that made this night possible. As the sacred potion is carefully ladled into its vessels, your mind isn't on the liquid itself, but on the immense, invisible architecture that dictated this very moment. The harvest didn't happen on a random Tuesday. It was the result of the astronomical calculations, a complex web of lunar and stellar observations that you and your fellow druids have been tracking with a fanatical precision for years. The 6th day of the moon, that was the non-negotiable window. Not the 5th, not the 7th. The 6th. And this wasn't a vague suggestion, it was a cosmic law as firm in their minds as the law of gravity is in yours. You look up through the skeletal branches of the sacred oaks, the steam from the cauldron obscuring the very stars you used to navigate here. The mainstream historical understanding, pieced together from Celtic calendars and later texts, confirms the Druids were accomplished astronomers. They didn't just see the moon as a light in the sky, they saw it as a fundamental pulse of life, a regulator of tides, growth, and spiritual potency. The mistletoe, a plant without roots, was considered especially attuned to these lunar rhythms. Its power was believed to peak as the moon waxed, reaching a crescendo on that specific 6th day, a moment of perfect balance before the full moon's dominance. To cut it at any other time would be to harvest a shadow of its potential, like picking fruit before it's ripe. The entire ritual, from the procession to the chanting, was a dance to the moon's silent music. But the moon was only part of the equation. The one that truly boggles your modern mind was the integration of the stars, specifically the winter constellations. The harvest had to occur not just on the 6th day of the moon, but with specific stars in specific positions, perhaps with the Pleiades cluster high in the sky, or Orion's belt cleaving the horizon. This created a unique, celestial fingerprint for the event, a once a year, or even once every 19 years, if the metonic cycle of the moon was involved, alignment that supercharged the ritual with astral energy. The Druids were not just lunar worshippers, they were early astrophysicists, mapping the heavens onto their earthly lives with a breathtaking ambition. They believed the mistletoe was a star that had fallen to earth, and to harvest it, you had to wait for the stars to give their permission. You remember the long, cold nights spent with star charts scratched onto slate, memorizing the slow, majestic dance of the heavens. Historians still argue whether this precise timing was purely spiritual, a way to align human action with the divine clockwork, or if it had a practical agricultural purpose, tied to the plant's actual biochemical properties which may fluctuate with lunar and seasonal cycles. As you finally lower your wooden paddle, your arm aching, you realize the distinction is meaningless. The calculation was everything. It was the foundation upon which the sickle's cut, the bull's sacrifice, and the potion's power all rested. Without this celestial green light, the golden blade was just a piece of jewelry, the white balls just livestock, and the mistletoe just a parasitic plant. The true magic was in the timing, a secret whispered by the moon and confirmed by the cold, distant wink of the stars. The weight of that celestial timing settles upon you not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing pressure. It is the pressure of the Druidic knowledge hoard, the vast, memorized library that contains the secrets of the stars, the moon, the plants, and the lore. As the potion cools in its sacred cups, you feel the ghost of every chant, every genealogy, every legal precedent, and every astronomical observation you were forced to internalize over those 6 long years. This entire ritual, from the specific pace of the procession to the angle of the sickle's cut, is a single, performed chapter from that immense, unwritten book. You are not just a participant. You are a walking, talking vessel for a tradition that would vanish the moment the last druid who remembered it took their final breath. This is the core of druidic power, and it's a burden as much as it is a privilege. The mainstream historical fact, reiterated by Roman and later Irish sources, is the absolute primacy of oral tradition. Caesar wrote that the Druids deemed it improper to commit their learning to writing, believing that reliance on texts weakened memory and, more importantly, risked the profanation of their knowledge by the uninitiated. You look around the circle at the faces illuminated by the fire and torches. Every single one of them is a custodian of this hoard. The chief druid holds the most, a lifetime of verses concerning the gods, the stars, and the intricate web of tribal lore. The healer druids hold the vast pharmacopoeia of chants and recipes. You, as a specialist, hold the specific, intricate knowledge of the mistletoe ritual, a dense subset of the whole. Together, you are a living, distributed database, and tonight you have successfully executed a complex query. You are imagining your own brain as a heavily guarded server room. Accessing a specific piece of information, like the correct star alignment for the harvest, feels like typing a command line prompt into your own mind. The data streams forth, not as a dry fact, but as a sensory memory, the chill of the night you learned it, the voice of your teacher, the smell of the peat fire in the teaching hut. It's knowledge entangled with experience, something a written scroll could never capture. This is why the Romans found the Druids so formidable and so frustrating. You can't conquer an idea, and you can't burn a book that exists only in the minds of men scattered across the hills and forests. As the ritual activities wind down, a profound sense of responsibility washes over you. The success of the night is a validation of this entire system. The knowledge was accurate. The timing was correct. The methods worked. Historians still argue whether this strict oral tradition was a brilliant strategy for maintaining a priestly monopoly on power or a tragic flaw that led to the eventual loss of almost their entire worldview when the Roman war machine and later Christianity dismantled their institutions. Watching the senior druids now, their faces serene in the firelight, you feel the answer is both. The power is real and intoxicating, but it is as fragile as human life itself. The mistletoe is harvested, the potion is brewed, but the true treasure, the knowledge that made it all possible, remains locked safely inside your heads, for now. The sacred cups of mistletoe potion are not passed around for a celebratory toast. Instead, they are carefully sealed and set aside, their contents now the most valuable political currency in the tribe. This is the moment the ritual transforms from a spiritual exercise into a raw political power play, and you are now at the very center of it. The chief druid, his authority magnified 100-fold by the night's success, turns his gaze from the cauldron towards the edge of the clearing. There, standing just outside the circle of initiates, is the local king or chieftain. He has witnessed the entire ceremony, a silent, powerful observer. He did not hold the cloth, he did not chant, he did not climb the tree. His role is different. He is the beneficiary, and his dependence on you and your kind is now absolute. The gift of the potion, or even a single berry from the harvest, is not a simple act of generosity. It is a reaffirmation of a sacred contract. The mainstream historical understanding, from Roman accounts, is that Druids held immense sway over the tribal kings. They could excommunicate individuals from religious festivals, which was a form of social and political death. They acted as judges in virtually all public and private disputes. And through rituals like this one, they controlled access to divine favor and supernatural aid. A king who possessed the mistletoe, blessed by the Druids and harvested under the correct stars, was a king whose rule was legitimized by the gods themselves. His fertility, the health of his people, and his success in battle were now tied to this sacred object you have provided. You watch as the chief Druid approaches the king, a single, small clay cup holding the glowing elixir in his hands. The body language is unmistakable. The Druid is not supplicating, he is bestowing. The king, a warrior used to command, slightly bows his head as he accepts the cup. This is the true harvest of the night, more valuable than any potion's curative power, the tangible, visible proof of Druidic authority. A cynical but probably accurate view was that the entire ritual was the ancient world's most brilliant public relations campaign. By wrapping their indispensable knowledge of calendars, law, medicine, in layers of impenetrable, awe-inspiring ritual, the Druids ensured their own job security and influence for centuries. They made themselves the indispensable middlemen between humanity and the divine. The king holds the cup as if it were a newborn child, his knuckles white. He knows the price of this gift is his ongoing deference. He will consult the Druids on matters of war and peace. He will abide by their legal judgments. He will provide them with food, tribute, and protection. Historians still argue whether the relationship between Druids and chieftains was truly one of priestly dominance or a more symbiotic partnership where each relied on the other for different forms of power, the sword and the sickle. But in this moment, watching the king cradle the Druid's gift, the power dynamic is clear. You didn't just climb a tree tonight, you climbed a rung on the ladder of tribal hierarchy. The mistletoe was the vehicle, but the destination was always influence. The ritual is over, but the Game of Thrones, subtly steered by the men in white robes, is just beginning. The torches begin to gutter, their flames dying down to glowing embers that paint the faces of the departing Druids in fleeting shades of orange and red. The king has withdrawn with his precious cup, the white balls have been carried away for the inevitable feast, and the sacred tools have been cleansed and stored. You stand for a moment alone in the clearing, the scent of blood and brew slowly being displaced by the returning, clean aroma of damp earth and night. The intense, focused energy of the ritual has dissipated, leaving behind a quiet, humming emptiness, like the silence in a great hall after a symphony's final note. This is when you feel it, the ritual's echo in modernity. The threads, though frayed and faded, that still connect this ancient night to your own world, centuries hence. You think of the mistletoe itself, stripped of its divinity, now reduced to a festive decoration. The mainstream historical trajectory is one of assimilation and dilution. The early Christian church, unable to stamp out the deep-rooted Celtic veneration of the plant, co-opted it. They transformed its meaning from a potent, life-giving panacea into a symbol of peace, love, and the promise of a kiss. The parasitic plant that once required golden sickles and bull's blood to harvest is now something you can buy in a plastic packet at a grocery store, a harmless sprig to be hung in a doorway. The mighty oak and its celestial tenant have been tamed, their power sanitized for mass consumption, a charming but empty relic of a faith that saw the world as alive and throbbing with magic. But the echoes are there, if you know how to listen. The persistent folk belief, even today, that mistletoe is a protective herb. In some parts of Europe, people still hang it in their homes to ward off evil spirits and lightning, a faint, genetic memory of its former power. The custom of kissing under it may itself be a distant, romanticized echo of the plant's ancient association with fertility and vitality. We have kept the symbol but lost the substance, turning a sacred ritual into a party game. Historians still argue whether these modern traditions are genuine, unbroken cultural survivals or romantic revivals concocted by Victorian-era antiquarians who were fascinated by the very druids we are now leaving behind in this darkening grove. You take one last look at the majestic oak, its silhouette a black cutout against the deep indigo of the pre-dawn sky. It is done. The knowledge was applied, the power was wielded, the balance was maintained. But as you turn to follow the last of the white robes back towards the world of men, you carry a new understanding. The true legacy of the Druids isn't just in the rituals they performed, but in the profound way they perceived a universe where everything was connected. The stars to the moon to the plant to the king to the tribe, and the tribe to the earth. We have gained much in our modern age, but we have perhaps lost that intricate, felt sense of belonging to a living, conscious cosmos. The clearing falls silent behind you, holding its secrets once more, its purpose fulfilled for another year, its ancient magic retreating back into the roots and the stones, waiting for a time when it might be understood again. And so, as the last embers of the torches fade into ash and the forest reclaims its solitary silence, we too must leave that sacred grove. The chants have faded on the wind, the golden sickle is sheathed, and the weight of ancient knowledge settles back into the soil from which it grew. You can let the images drift away now, the white robes, the towering oak, the luminous berries falling like captured starlight. Feel the solidity of your own world returning, the gentle weight of your blankets, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. The Druids and their mistletoe are a dream of the past, a whisper from a time when the boundary between earth and sky was thin as a veil. They sought balance in a world they believed was alive with spirit, and in their quest, they found a kind of magic that we, in our rush of progress, have almost forgotten. But here, in the quiet dark, you can still feel a faint echo of it, a connection to the turning seasons, the silent stars, and the deep, abiding mystery of the natural world. Let that feeling be a comfort, a gentle lullaby as you drift towards sleep. The journey is over. The night is calm. And the world, in its own ancient, slow way, continues to turn.